The impossible role nobody wanted. Some acting roles demand talent, others demand years of preparation. But according to the transcript, portraying Michael Jackson required something far greater. It meant carrying the expectations of millions of fans who had spent decades watching, studying, and celebrating one of the most recognizable entertainers in history. Every dance move, every vocal expression, every signature gesture had already become part of popular culture. The source explains that stepping into Michael's shoes was never going to be an ordinary acting job. It was a responsibility that very few performers would be willing to accept. Even before filming began, the role was surrounded by enormous pressure because audiences already knew exactly how Michael looked, sounded, and moved. According to the transcript, the search for the right actor became one of this production's biggest challenges. Nearly 2,000 performers were reportedly considered before the filmmakers finally selected Jaafar Jackson. The decision was never based on family connections alone. The source emphasizes that producers needed someone capable of portraying not only Michael's legendary stage presence, but also the emotions, discipline, and humanity behind the global icon. Every rehearsal, every audition, and every screen test focused on finding someone who could balance technical precision with emotional authenticity. The transcript suggests that this was the moment where personal history met professional responsibility, as Jaafar faced the challenge of proving he deserved the role through preparation rather than his famous surname. The transcript also reveals that accepting the role was only the beginning. According to the source, Jaafar entered a years-long process of dance rehearsals, vocal coaching, physical conditioning, and emotional preparation before cameras even started rolling. His daily routine reportedly included hours of rehearsing, studying archival footage, and analyzing Michael's performances to understand the discipline behind every movement. Rather than simply copying familiar routines, he worked to understand the creativity and dedication that defined Michael Jackson's career. The source presents this preparation as evidence that portraying Michael required far more than resemblance. It required complete commitment. As the documentary continues, the story moves to the audition that changed everything, revealing how one performance convinced the filmmakers they had finally found the actor capable of bringing the king of pop's extraordinary story to the screen. The audition that changed Jaafar's life. Long before audiences saw the first trailer, there was a single moment that would determine whether this film could even move forward. According to the transcript, the audition for Michael was unlike a typical casting process. The filmmakers were not simply searching for an actor who looked like Michael Jackson. They needed someone who could carry the emotional weight of portraying one of the most celebrated entertainers in history. Every decision would be examined by fans, critics, and the Jackson family alike. The source explains that Jaafar Jackson entered the audition fully aware that his family name alone would never be enough. If he wanted the role, he would have to earn it through discipline, preparation, and performance. The transcript describes how Jaafar approached the opportunity with remarkable focus. Rather than relying on his natural resemblance to his uncle, he immersed himself in studying the qualities that made Michael unique. According to the source, he carefully observed Michael's movements, stage presence, emotional expressions, and the subtle details that audiences often overlooked. The preparation extended far beyond learning choreography. It required understanding the human experiences behind the public image and developing the confidence to portray them on screen. Producers, the transcript explains, were searching for someone capable of representing both the legendary performer and the person behind the legend. That challenge demanded far more than technical skill. It required complete artistic commitment. According to the transcript, this audition became the turning point in Jaafar's career. It marked the moment when he began moving beyond being known simply as Michael Jackson's nephew and started earning recognition as an actor, trusted with one of Hollywood's most demanding roles. The source presents the audition as the bridge between personal history and professional responsibility, where years of admiration for his uncle transformed into the opportunity to tell Michael's story on the big screen. But winning the role did not end the pressure. It only intensified it. As the documentary continues, the focus shifts to the surprising reality that unfolded after the casting announcement. Before filming had even begun, thousands of opinions flooded social media, and Jaafar suddenly found himself at the center of a worldwide debate he never expected. The backlash before filming even started. For most actors, the biggest challenge begins when the cameras start rolling. But according to the transcript, Jaafar Jackson faced one of his greatest obstacles long before filming officially began. The moment Lionsgate announced that Michael Jackson's nephew had been cast to portray the King of Pop, the reaction spread rapidly across social media and entertainment news. Almost immediately, thousands of fans began debating whether anyone, even a member of Michael's own family, could successfully take on such an iconic role. The source explains that expectations were extraordinarily high because audiences already had decades of memories connected to Michael's music, performances, and public appearances. Before Jaafar had filmed a single scene, he was already being judged by millions of people around the world. According to the transcript, much of the early criticism centered on one question. Had Jaafar been chosen because of his talent, or simply because he was a Jackson? The source explains that this became one of the biggest discussions surrounding the production. Rather than responding publicly to every opinion, Jaafar reportedly focused on preparation. He continued training, rehearsing choreography, studying Michael's performances, and working closely with the filmmakers. The transcript suggests that both director Antoine Fuqua and producer Graham King believed the performance itself would eventually answer the criticism more effectively than any interview or press statement. Their confidence remained rooted in what they had witnessed during auditions and rehearsals, not in public speculation. As described in the transcript, the release of the first official production images began to change the conversation. Many viewers who had questioned the casting reportedly expressed surprise at Jaafar's physical transformation and the attention given to recreating Michael's appearance. While opinions remain divided, the source suggests that more people started discussing the performance itself rather than the casting decision. For Jaafar, this represented an important turning point. Instead of trying to silence criticism, he allowed months of preparation and hard work to speak for themselves. The transcript presents this period as a reminder that some of Hollywood's biggest roles are judged long before audiences ever enter cinema. As the documentary continues, however, public opinion becomes less important than the demanding work taking place behind closed studio doors. In the next chapter, we step inside the intensive training that transformed Jaafar Jackson into the king of pop. Training to become the king of pop. Winning the role was only the beginning. According to the transcript, once Jaafar Jackson was officially cast, the real challenge started. Portraying Michael Jackson required far more than memorizing dialogue or learning a few famous dance moves. Every performance had to reflect decades of artistry that audiences already knew by heart. The source explains that the filmmakers understood fans would notice even the smallest details, from the way Michael walked onto a stage to the timing of a simple hand gesture. Because of that, the production committed itself to months of intensive preparation before principal photography reached its most demanding scenes. According to the transcript, one of the most important parts of that preparation was Jaafar's work with renowned choreographers Rich and Tony Talawega, who had previously performed and toured with Michael Jackson himself. The source explains that their goal was not simply to teach choreography, but to help Jaafar understand the rhythm, precision, and discipline that defined Michael's performances. Every rehearsal reportedly focused on details that casual viewers might never notice. The posture before a dance sequence, the timing between movements, the control behind each gesture, and the confidence Michael projected while performing. Rather than encouraging imitation alone, the choreographers worked to recreate the energy and authenticity that audiences associated with Michael throughout his career. The transcript also describes how the transformation extended beyond dance rehearsals. According to the source, Jaafar spent countless hours studying archival footage, refining his physical movements, and preparing for some of the film's most iconic musical recreations. Every department contributed to the process. Costume designers recreated legendary outfits with remarkable attention to detail, while the creative team worked together to ensure that each performance felt authentic rather than theatrical. The source suggests that this preparation demanded extraordinary patience because nothing about portraying Michael Jackson could be rushed. Every improvement came through repetition, discipline, and constant refinement. By the time cameras rolled on the film's major performance sequences, Jaafar had already invested months preparing for moments that audiences would experience in only a few minutes. As the documentary continues, the training reaches its greatest test when production begins recreating one of the most famous performances in music history, a sequence that challenged everyone involved to match the legacy of the original. Inside the most difficult dance rehearsal, every Michael Jackson performance looked effortless on stage. But according to the transcript, recreating that same level of precision proved to be one of the most demanding parts of the entire production. Among all the musical sequences prepared for the biopic, one stood above the rest, the recreation of Billie Jean. The source explains that this was not simply another dance routine. It was one of the most recognizable performances in entertainment history, remembered by millions of people almost frame by frame. That familiarity created enormous pressure because audiences already knew exactly how every movement was supposed to look. Even the smallest mistake could immediately stand out. According to the transcript, Jaafar approached this challenge by breaking the performance into its smallest details. The preparation focused on far more than mastering the famous moonwalk. The source describes countless hours spent studying weight transfer, foot placement, rhythm, timing, posture, and body control, so that every movement would feel natural rather than rehearsed. During one behind-the-scenes interview included in the transcript, Jaafar was asked which performance proved the hardest to recreate. Without hesitation, he answered, "Billie Jean, Motown 25." That response reflected the enormous respect everyone involved had for the original performance, which had become one of Michael Jackson's defining moments in music history. The transcript explains that rehearsals often extended beyond choreography alone. Between practice sessions, Jaafar reportedly returned to archival footage, carefully studying Michael's performances before heading back to the rehearsal floor to refine what he had learned. According to the source, the goal was never to replace or surpass the original performance. Instead, the filmmakers wanted to preserve its artistry while presenting it authentically within a cinematic story. Every repetition became another opportunity to improve, gradually transforming difficult movements into instinctive ones. Looking back, the transcript suggests that these rehearsals represented far more than technical preparation. They reflected the patience, discipline, and relentless pursuit of excellence that had defined Michael Jackson's own career. As the documentary continues, the preparation finally reaches its first major public test, when the world gets its very first look at Jaafar Jackson transformed into the king of pop, and audiences begin deciding for themselves whether the impossible had finally become possible. The first look that changed everything. Months of preparation can remain hidden from the public, but according to the transcript, there comes a moment when years of private work are finally placed before millions of people. For the Michael biopic, that moment arrived with the release of the film's first official footage. The source explains that this was far more than a typical movie preview. Audiences around the world were not simply watching a trailer, they were deciding whether anyone could convincingly portray one of the most recognizable performers in music history. Every frame carried enormous expectations, because Michael Jackson's image had been etched into popular culture for decades. According to the transcript, the first footage immediately sparked intense discussion. Fans carefully examined Jaafar Jackson's movements, facial expressions, costumes, posture, and overall screen presence. The source describes how viewers analyzed even the smallest details, comparing them with Michael's original performances. For Jaafar, this represented a dramatic turning point. Until then, his preparation had taken place almost entirely behind closed doors through rehearsals, dance training, vocal practice, and months of research. Now, every hour of that work was being evaluated in public by an audience already familiar with Michael's performances. The transcript suggests that the trailer became the first real measure of whether years of preparation had successfully transformed an actor into a believable portrayal of the king of pop. The transcript also presents this moment as more than a marketing campaign. According to the source, the release of the footage marked the transition from private dedication to public accountability. Every rehearsal, every coaching session, and every carefully recreated movement now had to withstand worldwide scrutiny. Rather than focusing only on visual resemblance, the filmmakers hoped audiences would recognize the discipline and emotional commitment behind the transformation. The source suggests that this first look demonstrated how seriously the production approached Michael Jackson's legacy, inviting viewers to judge the performance based on the work itself rather than early assumptions. As the documentary continues, however, another challenge remained hidden behind the camera. Recreating Michael's appearance was only part of the transformation. The next chapter explores one of the most delicate tasks of all, mastering the unmistakable voice that millions of people could recognize within just a few words, finding the voice of Michael Jackson. A costume can recreate an appearance. Choreography can recreate a performance. But according to the transcript, there was one part of Michael Jackson that could not be learned simply by watching old concert footage: his voice. Long before audiences recognized Michael by his silhouette or his signature dance moves, they recognized the gentle tone, careful rhythm, and unmistakable way he spoke. The source explains that recreating those qualities became one of the most delicate and demanding parts of Jaafar Jackson's preparation. It wasn't enough to sound similar. Every word had to feel authentic to the person behind the public image. According to the transcript, Jaafar approached this challenge with the same discipline he applied to dance rehearsals. The preparation reportedly involved working alongside vocal coaches while carefully studying Michael's interviews, public appearances, and recorded conversations. Rather than memorizing individual phrases, the source explains that Jaafar focused on understanding how Michael communicated. Every pause, every breath, every change in tone, and every subtle expression contributed to the authenticity of the performance. The goal was not to imitate a famous voice mechanically, but to understand the emotion, personality, and calm presence that audiences had associated with Michael throughout his life. As the transcript notes, the connection between voice and character gradually became stronger as the months of preparation continued. The transcript argues that this process revealed an important truth about portraying Michael Jackson. His identity was never defined by choreography alone. His speaking voice carried warmth, humility, and quiet confidence that fans remembered just as clearly as his performances on stage. According to the source, recreating those qualities required extraordinary attention to countless small details that, together, formed one of the most recognizable personalities in entertainment history. For Jaafar, mastering the voice became another step toward understanding the man behind the legend, allowing the performance to move beyond physical resemblance and into genuine emotional authenticity. As the documentary continues, the story turns inward. After months of training, rehearsals, and transformation, portraying Michael Jackson began changing not only the performance, but also the performer himself. The next chapter explores how this extraordinary role became a personal journey that reshaped Jaafar Jackson as both an actor and an artist, the personal transformation behind the performance. According to the transcript, there came a point during production when the transformation was no longer limited to costumes, choreography, or makeup. After months of rehearsals and preparation, the experience of portraying Michael Jackson began to change Jaafar Jackson personally. The source explains that the role demanded far more than technical accuracy. It required living with Michael's story every day, studying his interviews, understanding his creative process, and revisiting defining moments from his life. As filming progressed, the challenge shifted from learning how Michael performed to understanding how he thought, how he created, and how he carried the extraordinary pressures of worldwide fame. According to the transcript, this journey required patience and complete dedication. Every rehearsal became another opportunity to understand the discipline that had shaped Michael's career. The source describes how Jaafar spent months working with choreographers, coaches, and the creative team while continually refining every aspect of his performance. Yet the preparation extended beyond physical movement. It also meant developing a deeper appreciation for Michael's relentless work ethic, his attention to detail, and the standards he set for himself throughout his career. The transcript suggests that the more Jaafar learned about Michael's creative process, the more he understood that greatness was never accidental. It was the result of years of preparation, sacrifice, and constant refinement. Those lessons gradually became part of Jaafar's own approach to the role. Looking back, the transcript presents this personal transformation as one of the film's most meaningful achievements. According to the source, the experience did more than prepare Jaafar to portray Michael Jackson on screen. It reshaped the way he approached his own craft as an actor. By the final stages of production, the performance reflected not only months of technical training, but also a deeper understanding of the dedication required to sustain an excellence at the highest level. Rather than simply recreating familiar moments from Michael's career, Jaafar had developed a new appreciation for the discipline that made those moments possible. As the documentary moves toward its conclusion, one final challenge remains. In the next chapter, we explore how the finished performance was received by those whose opinions mattered most, the Jackson family, and why their reaction became one of the production's most emotional milestones when the Jackson family finally watched. For months, the cast and crew had been focused on one goal: creating a film worthy of Michael Jackson's extraordinary legacy. But according to the transcript, there was one audience whose opinion carried more weight than anyone else's: the Jackson family. Long before the public would see the finished film, those closest to Michael would experience the performance through entirely different eyes. They weren't simply watching a movie about a global superstar. They were revisiting the life of a son, a brother, an uncle, and a family member whose memory remained deeply personal. The source explains that this reality made every rehearsal and every scene even more significant, because authenticity mattered most to the people who had known Michael beyond the stage. According to the transcript, Jaafar understood that responsibility from the very beginning. Although he shared Michael's family name, the role still demanded that he earn the trust of those closest to the king of pop through dedication rather than expectation. The source explains that throughout production, Jaafar focused on portraying not only Michael's performances, but also the qualities his family remembered most: his quiet nature, his discipline, and his commitment to perfection. Every month of preparation, every dance rehearsal, and every coaching session was guided by the belief that the performance had to feel emotionally honest. The transcript suggests that, for Jaafar, receiving recognition from the Jackson family would represent something far more meaningful than public praise or critical reviews. It would confirm that his years of preparation had respected Michael's story in the way it deserved. Looking back, the transcript presents the family's reaction as one of the emotional milestones of the entire production. According to the source, the journey was never simply about recreating famous concerts or iconic moments from Michael's career. It was about preserving the memory of a man whose influence reached far beyond music. By the time filming neared completion, the project had become a shared effort involving actors, choreographers, producers, and members of Michael's own family, all working toward the same purpose. Their support, the transcript suggests, became a powerful reminder that the film was not only telling Michael Jackson's story, it was helping protect a legacy that continues to inspire millions around the world. As the documentary reaches its final chapter, one question remains. After years of preparation and extraordinary commitment, what kind of legacy will this film ultimately leave for future generations discovering Michael Jackson's story for the very first time? The legacy that Michael is trying to protect. As this journey comes to an end, one message stands above everything else. According to the transcript, the Michael biopic was never intended to recreate concerts alone or simply remind audiences of familiar songs. From the beginning, the filmmakers set out to preserve something much larger: the story of an artist whose influence transformed music, performance, and popular culture. Every decision, from casting and choreography to vocal coaching and production design, reflected the belief that Michael Jackson's life deserved to be told with care, patience, and respect. The source explains that this responsibility guided the entire production from the first audition to the final day on set. The transcript describes how that commitment shaped everyone involved in the project. Jaafar Jackson devoted years to preparing for the role, studying Michael's performances, developing his physical transformation, refining his voice, and exploring the discipline that defined his uncle's career. Director Antoine Fuqua and the creative team focused on building an environment where authenticity mattered more than imitation, encouraging Jaafar to understand the person behind the global icon rather than simply recreate famous moments. The source also highlights the emotional significance of support from members of the Jackson family, whose encouragement represented an important milestone during production. Together, these efforts reflected a shared goal, not merely to produce another musical biopic, but to introduce a new generation to Michael Jackson's story through a thoughtful and emotionally grounded portrayal. According to the transcript, the story does not end with a single film. It notes that the production originally explored a much longer version of Michael's life before the material was condensed, and it discusses plans for a follow-up chapter, using existing footage from the production, presenting this as part of a broader effort to tell Michael Jackson's life in multiple stages rather than rushing through it. The source frames this continuation as an opportunity to explore the remaining chapters of his journey while preserving the complexity of his legacy. Whether audiences ultimately embrace the film will be their decision, but the transcript concludes that the purpose behind the project has remained consistent throughout, to honor the dedication, creativity, and humanity of one of music's most influential performers. If this film succeeds in inspiring people to look beyond the legend and rediscover the artist behind the music, then, according to the source, it will have achieved the goal it set out to accomplish from the very beginning. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more in-depth documentaries exploring the stories behind music's greatest legends. Until next time, thank you for watching.